Welcome, and thank you for joining today's conference, Ross Program Reporting. Please note that all audience audio connections will be muted until the Q&A portion of the call. We'll give you instructions on how to ask questions at that time. You can also ask a content-related question by clicking the Q&A icon located at the bottom of the screen. Type your question in and send. If you need technical assistance, please send a chat and address the Inteller Events host. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded. With that, I'll turn the conference over to Michael Simmons, Ross Program Manager. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Tegan. As Tegan mentioned, my name is Michael Simmons, and we're really excited about today's session. We really want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for today's session. Later, I'm going to introduce some of my colleagues, but suffice to say for now, the purpose of the session is that we really want to help you be prepared for upcoming Ross reporting. We know that reporting can be a very stressful time. A lot of things can feel like it's coming at you at once. So we want to have this session to present some information to you, answer some of your questions, and ultimately give you the support that you need during this important time in your Ross programming. Just before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. We do have a chat feature as well as a Q&A. For the chat, we ask that you just put in your name and where you are, what state, city and state for your Ross programming. We really want to use it as a way of knowing who's here and as an additional opportunity to connect with you. In terms of the Q&A, we ask that you put any questions in the Q&A. We're going to have a section at the end of the presentation to answer your questions, and we'll be using the Q&A. And if we can't fully understand a question at that time, Tegan will, allow you to unmute, or she will unmute you, and you can ask that question that way also. As we look forward to getting started to today's session, I want to introduce some of my colleagues. Again, my name is Michael Simmons. Some of these names I know are familiar with you. Lewis, who's actually a Ross program manager, is actually on detail now. I know that may not make a lot of sense to some of you, but he's away from the Ross programming, but we're looking forward to Lewis rejoining the program this month, early next month in November. Dina is a wonderful colleague. She's a Ross program lead. Sandy Nokram. Fortunately, I don't think Sandy is going to be able to make it today, but Sandy is also, along with Dina and myself, been active in the mailbox. So whenever you all are corresponding to the Ross mailbox, many times we're the individuals behind the scene giving you your answers. Many of you I know Trey. Trey is our fearless leader and really someone who gives us incredible insight given his experience with the Ross program. So joining me today on the call is Dina and Trey. And again, we're really looking forward to just the opportunity to connect with you and again to help alleviate any fears or concerns you have with your Ross programming. Today's agenda is really straightforward, and I think it's going to be more of a conversation and a presentation, or at least a combination of both. But we want to just go over just a general overview of Ross reporting, help you understand like the tools that you need to have a accurate and a complete report, some best practices. And many of you all know that two important things we have: an extension of the reporting period. We have some new data elements that we want to go over, and ultimately we want to stop with giving you a chance to ask us any questions that you may have related to your Ross reporting. So in getting started, right, why do we have this requirement in the Ross program for your reporting? I think it's important to start with the importance of reporting, right? The importance of reporting is that it's a tool that helps you assess the gaps and successes in your programming. Program reporting is not just a grant requirement, but we really want you to use it as a tool to understand what's happening in your Ross programming. We feel that reporting is a great opportunity for you to assess your program, understand like some possible gaps, and really use it as a way to refine. So reporting, and in this case, even evaluation, is not used as an opportunity to disprove, but it's really used as an opportunity for you to improve your programming. It gives you an opportunity to do everything from understanding how you're touching bases with residents. It gives you an opportunity to think about your match partners. And ultimately, that data that you give us is fed into the ROS data dashboard. And the data dashboard is a wonderful opportunity for you to not only assess your program internally, but to see how you're doing compared to other programs, right? And that comparison is not, again, part of competition, but in many cases, it's an opportunity for you to look at possibly some challenges you're having in a particular domain and look at your ROS counterparts around the country and see how they're doing. And ultimately, it can be used as a way of not only assessing internally, but also opportunity for you to connect with other ROS programming programs around the country. The last three things, it gives us an opportunity to think about technical assistance, right? And to be more intentional about having technical assistance that's supporting you in your programming. Of course, the reporting keeps you in compliance with your grant requirements. But even more importantly than that, right? For us to know about your success in your program, it gives us an opportunity to continue to justify the importance and need of the ROS programming and ultimately be able to go to those who are making these decisions and thinking about how we can expand ROS programming, be it expanding the number of programs that are funded, or in some cases, expanding the amount of funding that's available to you. Core functions of ROS programming. Again, these slides are meant to be more preliminary and a review. I know many of you are familiar with this and have seen this information before. But the core functions of ROS program reporting is that it gives you an opportunity to assess the needs of your residents, right? Like, what are your needs of your residents? You do that through an assessment based on what you understand the needs of your residents are. You coordinate services. That coordination can be something as broad as working with community partners. It can be something as broad as direct service, which is an opportunity for you to provide services that may not necessarily be offered through a community partner. But even more importantly, it gives you an opportunity to think about case management, right? Case management is that one-on-one attention that you give to individual residents who are participants in your program, and to think about broadly how you can do more in terms of connectivity with residents to each other through resident engagement, and that connectivity with you connecting with a large segment of your resident population. And lastly, of course, all of that feeds into you being able to assess and evaluate how well your program is doing, and to give us that information for us to also be able to understand and assess how well your program is doing. So what is required? Our basic requirements are very straightforward, right? Like basically two things, right? We require you to have reporting that is effective, something that's quantifiable and outcome oriented in terms of being able to assess and measure your performance. We use this to understand how well your program is performing. And ultimately, we ask that you use it for that same reason. Your reporting is being done through HUD standards for success framework. This framework is a matrix that allow us to understand various data elements that you're reporting on. Here, I think it's important, and I'm going to talk about this a lot during the presentation, but the HUD data guide is really an important tool, which has definitions related to the metrics. And we are, of course, referring to the data guide 4.0. So there are 8 areas of need for the ROS program: digital inclusion, education, elderly, and residents with disabilities, employment, financial literacy, health and wellness, reentry, and substance abuse. In thinking about those areas of need, they are specific key performance indicators or KPIs. And that's basically your program matrix to help you measure the achievements that you are experiencing in the desired outcomes. As you can see, the KPIs are very specific, quantifiable, and they're associated with your area of need. So for each area of need, there are specific KPIs that are displayed here. So for digital inclusion, education, financial literacy, and health and wellness, there. And for employment, elderly services and residents with disability, reentry, and substance abuse. These are some of the key performance indicators. And even more information is in the data guide. Again, something I'm going to be talking about a lot during today's presentation. So the question is, when and how should, you collect data? So the data collection process is both formal and informal. Formally, it starts with your intake assessment. It's important, I think, here to remember that for the ROS program, there's participants and then there are non-participants, right? So if you remember, a participant is a ROS resident that has had their intake assessment. So that's what helps you understand if this individual is identified as a participant or a non-participant, if they've had their intake assessment. Next, data collection can be done through a formal process of regular meetings with participants throughout the year, your assessments, your annual and interim reexaminations, and informally, they can be done through interactions that you have with residents, be it regular meetings or meetings with partners and service providers. And of course, again, formally, it can be periodic surveys, administered either in person or electronically, right? So this is all the opportunities that you have to collect data. Again, informally, some of those can just be general interactions that you have with residents. Formally, it can be your intake assessment, it can be regular meetings and assessments, surveys, and just other opportunities that you have to connect with residents. The reporting is important, but key to great reporting and good reporting and quality reporting is a quality data collection process. So it's important for you to kind of think about that in terms of what you want to do with your reporting and to be more intentional about your reporting. I think it helps you avoid some common errors in your reporting process. And thinking about your common errors that we see, and this kind of speaks to what I mentioned earlier about reporting can be a very stressful process. One of the ways to prevent it from being stressful is to not wait to the last month to collect data, right? To be really intentional about trying to collect data and not wait till the end. I'm going to talk about grant solutions. We actually have a session coming up on October 18th that's going to be hosted by Grant Solutions. But a lot goes into understanding that process. And one important thing is not to wait for you to request access to the grant solutions. Other issues is not submitting data with personal identifiable information, missing responses in data elements, and neglecting to review the data guide. This actually should be Data Guide 4.0 and the webinars that are on HUD Exchange. These, I think, are very important tips to kind of help you think about how to not make this time frame any more stressful than it has to be, but trying to be as intentional as possible. I think the other important aspect of not waiting to collect data at the last minute is that your data collection process and your reporting should not just be something that you're giving back to HUD, but it should be something that helps you understand, again, the successes that you're having, areas that you're achieving, up to what your standard is and what HUD is asking. But reporting also and being able to collect data early on and reflect on that data gives you an opportunity to think about what are some gaps, right? Like what are some things that you internally can begin to do differently or better in terms of improving your outcomes. And thinking about best practices, right? Over the years, some things that we've seen in terms of what's been really important in helping sites not only report accurate and quality data, but also helping them understand their program in real time is the use of case management software. Again, for HUD, it's not something that we advocate you use any particular software, nor do we, mandate that you have to use software. But again, in thinking about best practices, right? The use of software, I think, is very important for programs. And we have a lot of anecdotal data that suggests that it also improves just the quality of the data output. Um, I think something else that's very important is, for you to identify and ensure that at least one person in your agency is familiar with grant solutions. Again, we say this a lot, but we have a session coming up on October 18th. But Grant Solutions will host that presentation. But it's really important for you to think about the grant solutions process in terms of being as proactive as possible. And again, not waiting to the last minute to get access to that system, or knowing that you have access and working out any potential issues or challenges that you have in terms of getting access. And I think the last thing I'll point to on this slide is, to review available resources. Tegan mentioned at the start of this session that this session would be recorded, but we have many other sessions that have been recorded that's actually on the HUD Exchange site. There are a number of resources along with the recordings that help you think about the reporting process and gives you the opportunity to answer any, real-time questions that you may have, as well as just continuing to use us, right? So in bullet 3, we have our Ross mailbox. So always feel free to send us an email, but it's also important to look at the resources that are out there for you. As you can imagine, for the Ross mailbox, a lot of questions come in. We do our best as we can to answer them as timely as possible. We do sessions not only like this, but we try to reach out to as many people as we can in terms of challenges that you have. But again, we have a repository of resources that are available to you on the HUD Exchange. I mentioned the grant solutions, right? Important to make sure that you have access, and that is a process where in some cases, if there's someone new to your program, I know we have a lot of new, not only programs, but also over the years, your Ross coordinator can change, right? Or personnel in your housing authority can change. You will need to submit a user account request form. Again, you can ask us and we can send that to you. Grant Solutions can also send that to you. But that's an opportunity for you to ensure that some of the preliminary things needed for reporting, access to grant solutions, make sure that you have someone on your in your housing authority or in your organization that has access. All those things are preliminary to get you to the point where you're ready to move forward with your reporting after you've collected your data. I would say this is the last time I'm going to talk about case management, but that probably wouldn't be true. But again, case management just is a wonderful opportunity for you to really think about how you could really report information accurately. I think, even some of the challenges that we've seen is, when you're trying to do stuff, pen and paper, if you have a change of a Ross coordinator, that person may not have the best of records. That can be incredible challenge. In some cases, really difficult for a site to overcome. So many challenges can come about by going through paper and pencil. But all of that, in some cases, can be, alleviated with great or good case management software. So it's something that we highly stress and something that we really encourage sites to consider if you haven't, and to think about how it can really help you in terms of not making the grant reporting time frame as any more stressful than it needs to be. So data reporting dates, of course, and we send out information about the extension. So this is how it would normally happen. The reporting period is, normally through October 1st to September 30th. It coincides with the fiscal year. It's very important for you to kind of think about all the things that you need to do leading up to these dates. Because these dates normally are fixed. Again, we had some challenges this year in terms of some questions and concerns. We heard you, so we extended the date, but we wanted to include this slide to help you think about what things would normally look like as it relates to your ROS reporting. And as I mentioned, we've extended reporting deadlines. The reporting deadline is December 31st of this year. That has changed. Another thing that's changed, and we'll talk about it a little later, is that we have new data elements that we're asking you to report on, and we're going to talk a little later about how to do that based on what circumstance that you may fall under. What has not changed with reporting is that we expect to see performance data along with demographic information for each resident, where a personal identifier should be included. Again, no personal identifiable information, but you should have a code that helps you identify the person. We also expect the ROS caseload to be have at least 50 participants at any given time of your grant term. And of course, this is an exception for new grantees who have 6 months to reach the 50 ROS participant threshold. Again, I think it's important to say here the importance between a ROS participant and a non-ROS participant, right? So in the reporting, you do have an opportunity to report on participants and non-participants, but it's important to keep in mind that what moves an individual from being a non-participant in the ROS program and a participant is your intake assessment. So intake assessment, you do an intake assessment on an individual, and that helps that person become an official part of your 50 count. And a participant, a non-participant, is an individual who you may be working with, who you may be giving referrals to, who may come to a job fair, may come to some general programming that you have, may come to your neighborhood engagement activities. You're helping this individual, but you haven't done a intake assessment on this individual. So a participant, again, is an individual who you've done an intake assessment on. That person becomes part of your 50 count. A non-participant, you can report, and we ask that you report on these individuals to help us understand the reach of your program, but this person has not gotten your intake assessment. Lastly, no personal identifiable information in your reports. Reports that have PII would be rejected, given that we can't receive any personal identifiable information in your reporting. Tools for you to report. There's Grant Solutions, online data collection system. Abbreviation is acronym for OLDC, is online data collection. OLDC is, of course, free. It's online, and it's a means that you can report on your data. And again, I know you may have a lot of questions today about OLDC. We'll answer those questions, but many of those questions too, we'll ask that you attend a session on October 18th that will be hosted by Grant Solutions. Other software management software is, I've talked about software, so that's one option. But other case management systems, you can also download at HUD Exchange, and that will give you opportunity to do either software, or you can also use Excel files. So part of our next few slides, we're going to talk about, some of the changes as it relates to both the new elements and how to report. We did send out some guidance on this, and based on some of the responses I got in the mailbox, it seems like it did alleviate some concerns or challenges that individuals were having. But for the new data elements that are under your area of need of your program, there's some guidance that we wanted to offer. So whenever possible, you report based on the options below, right? Here are some options to report on your new data elements. If the data elements are not required for you to report based on your area of need, you should select NA response. This response would not impact your data availability score. And if you remember, your data availability score is something that is tracked on the ROS dashboard. If new data elements are required for you to report based on your area of need, but you did not track that information on your residents, you can select no here, right? And lastly, if the new data elements are required for you to report based, again, on your area of need, you track this information with your residents, you should just select the appropriate response option. Again, we send out some guidance on this, and I know that individuals may have questions, and we'll cover that during the Q&A portion of today's session. But just keep in mind, we know that there are new data elements out there. We know that in some cases, those data elements do fall on your area of need. We also know that in some cases, you have not been tracking that information. We know in some cases, fortunately, you have. But we also know that, there are different responses for different categories that you may find yourself in. And again, we wanted just to provide some guidance and also some patience as, we help you understand how to incorporate those new data elements into your reporting process for this year. So we have a number of resources that I've mentioned before to just kind of help you think about your ROS programming and just some things that we wanted you to keep in mind as that you continue to use and reflect on, or go to HUD Exchange, check out information that's on your data dashboard. And to the degree that you need just additional guidance or and have additional questions, right? We have the ROS mailbox, as well as a direct access that we want to provide you to grant solutions. And lastly, I just wanted to end before we turn it over to question and answer is just reminding you about the upcoming training on October 18th at 2 p.m. And again, that's going to be hosted by Grant Solutions, and it's going to focus a lot on the OLDC system. So with that, I didn't know if Trey, Dina, if you had anything you wanted to add, anything I may have either glossed over or not given any attention to at all. Feel free to let me and the group know. And then we'll go to the question and answers also.
Yes, I was just going to add something, which is one thing being unrelated, which is many of you guys may have remembered or remember Stephanie Adams. And I don't know if we've had a webinar since she's left HUD, but she received her dream job and still great friends with all of us on the team, but she's now at the Department of State as a Foreign Affairs officer, and she checks in to see how the ROS program is going, but wanted to give you guys that update. As Michael may be new to many of you guys, but certainly not new to me. He's been on our team for at least a year and and a half now for some change, and is working on the Ross program. So great job with uh, Michael doing this webinar. And as you can imagine, as much as this information is new for you all, it also is somewhat new for Michael as well. So great job, Michael. I did want to also point out that I know the reporting, especially reporting on individuals, can be tedious and strenuous, and we don't, for you all, and what we don't want is you guys to stress out and be burdened. However, we do want, accurate data, and as well as to be able to, tell Congress as well as our leadership all of the work that you guys are doing. With that being said, we also know that our reporting does not capture all the work that you're doing. So we are asking very specific questions, and so that we can be able to see in these areas that you're reporting on what you are doing. And lastly, for those that have had a Ross program for some time, you know that a lot of the reporting was more aggregate, where this one is individual. And in some instance, this may be causing, or this may cause more one-on-one case management for you all. What we've said in our NOFOs is that, we expect a 50-to-1 ratio, meaning for every one coordinator, there's at least 50 folks being served throughout the year at any given time. And we know with those 50 individuals, they may be in different places, right? One may require more time for one-on-one case management than the other. Really what we're reporting on is your progress with your case management. Certainly you guys have community events, right, that you all are doing, and we want you to also be able to report on that. But I do want to just give you that sort of line of thinking, because we do know you guys are reporting on individuals and where your focus should be. So with that, Michael, Dina, did you want to add anything?
No, thanks, Trey. I didn't. Well, other than to say that we put in the chat links to the data guide and to a quick reference guide, and I'll put the link into the data dashboard as well, so you guys can, if you haven't looked at it, you can start looking at it. But there are questions in the Q&A. Tell me if I can read them out if you want.
Yeah, Michael, let us know how you want us to do this.
Yeah, if you can read them out.
Sure.
And Dean, I think we've answered some too in the Q&A too. So
Yes,
I
yes.
think you all were managing that. So yeah, whatever you feel is best in terms of.
Okay, so I'll read the ones that we didn't respond to in a typed answer. So here's one. Could you share an example this is from Dustin Kane, of what a best practice SFS, I think Standards for Success, Ross participant assessment, and interim reexamination looks like? Thank you.
Do you want me to take that on, Michael?
Could you please?
Yeah. So we don't have an example for Standard for Success. We do have example assessments on our Ross Ed Exchange webpage. So if you go into the Running Ross step-by-step guide, we do have sample assessments there. However, those assessments don't necessarily align with the data metrics that we're asking you to track. However, one of the projects that we're looking to do this year, so maybe that be some time coming out next year, is to work on an assessment tool for you all that's specific, that aligns with what you're reporting on. So that is something we're looking forward to doing in the near future.
Thank you for that, Trey.
Okay, thank you for that. The next question is, can we report as usual by the end of October?
So Trey, if you don't mind, the answer is yes. You can.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes, so you can submit by the end of October. So one of the issues that, one, we wanted to extend because we wanted to give you guys more time. We also were, to be honest, we were like, is a shutdown going to happen? And we wanted to be able to respond to you if that shutdown did happen. Fortunately, the shutdown didn't happen, so we're able, we still wanted to extend. But the other thing is for those that are using, that are uploading your um, reports using the Excel template, that Excel template needed to be updated or needs to be updated. And so we were giving ample time for Grant Solutions to do that update and also put on the Stand for Success HUD Exchange page for you all to be able to then take that template and use it to upload. So yes, you can certainly submit by October 30th. However, submitting by December 31st will just give you guys more time to report on for this reporting period.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So there's a question about how do you obtain an assessment from Elizabeth. Elizabeth, we just answered that, so hopefully you heard the answer there. And then let's see, there's a question from Chantal about having 6 months to get to 50, if you only get 6 months to get to 50 participants. And the answer to that is no, we don't expect you to get up to 50 participants in that first 6 months, but we certainly do expect that by the end of your first year. Okay, here's another
Dina,
one. Yes.
Dina, I was going to say, I know Anna has had her hand up for some time.
Oh,
on the.
Please go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
Is there a way for us to unmute Anna?
Yep,
TK,
I've gone ahead and I've unmuted Anna. Anna, you're going to need to click on the pop-up that just appeared. There you go. Anna, you're unmuted. Make sure that if you have a separate microphone, that your microphone is unmuted.
Maybe we can go to Chantel.
Okay, we'll go to Chantal next.
Sorry, I think I hit that button by accident. I'm Chantel.
Okay.
Thanks though, guys.
No problem.
All right.
Dina, should we go to Priscilla, and then we can go back to the Q&A? Priscilla.
All right, Priscilla, I've gone ahead and there you go.
Yes, I don't believe I have a question, but I would like to thank you for everything that you're doing.
All right, thank you.
That's good to hear.
Yes. And I guess for those, if you do have a question, you can raise your hand, and we'll switch between the Q&A and also for you guys to phone in your questions. So Dina, I'll go back to you.
Okay, yep. All right, so we're getting quite a few. So here's one that I see a lot. I need to change the unique personal identifiers and other information in my annual reports. Is it possible to unsubmit so it can be edited? On the report form, status history, it says automatically locked from changes.
That
so
is
it's automatically locked. Mm-hmm.
Yep. That is a great question. So one of the reasons why it automatically locks is because from year to year, HUD, right, we are working to track the progress from year to year of your participants. And if you change that person identifier, then we're no longer able to track that person. So in the event that you need to change that person identifier, for example, first you were using Grant Solutions and then you changed to a new case management software. For example, now you're using Family Metrics or Ask Online. So it's generating a new person identifier for you. If you fall in that sort of scenario, then email ross-pih@hud.gov so we can help resolve that for you, because we'll need to also work with our contractors to make sure that the old identifier is being linked to the new identifier.
Okay, great. Here's another good one. Oh, it keeps moving. I'm sorry. Because new questions come in. So I have sorry about that. I apologize. Okay, here it is. Let's say we have to track health and wellness, but the client is coming to us for rent assistance, not anything to do with health or wellness. Do we put no to the responses? Will that hurt our score because we assisted someone in one area but did not want any help in another area?
Great question. So as far as data quality, right, it won't hurt because you're putting no. It would hurt if you would, it would hurt your data quality score if you were putting information not collected. But because you're putting no, that they didn't receive that service, then it wouldn't hurt your data quality score. However, Stephen, I think you raise a really good question on like what are the immediate needs, and then how do you then address those needs while also getting information for reporting, and we can talk about that. But I would love for you to email the Ross mailbox, because I think we can offer up some really good tips there, and maybe I don't want to take away from our Q&A time, but I do think it could be about how often you are meeting with participants, right? After you're addressing their needs, what is your follow-up? Are there some initial questions that you can do at the time of meetup and need? But ultimately, right, that is a realistic situation and a challenge, and we're happy to further discuss with you.
Yeah, Trey, I think that's a great point because, the presentation today, we talked about the new data elements, but, to your point, it also applies to, existing data elements if you haven't necessarily tracked that information, but you're, providing services to the resident. So.
Okay. So let's see, there's a question about what are the specific changes from the last data guide? We added a number of new data elements which were listed in the message that went out earlier. I think it was last week.
Yeah.
Yep. So I would say as far as the way you're reporting, nothing has changed. It's we've added the new data elements, and we provided more clarity on some of the data elements that may have been confusing. But maybe, Michael, we can think about sometime before December 31st if we wanted to highlight the data guide. I will say, or at least send out the webinar, because I want to say in June, if I'm correct, Dina, there was a webinar that we recorded on the data guide, and we can send that out to you, Jessica.
Yep.
Or we'll send that to the listserv.
Yep. Yeah. Yes. Okay, then there's another question here about, I think this is a really good one. Should you have goals attached to each ROS participant? Some don't want to work on goals. They just want help from the coordinator when they want it. If so, how is this information reported to HUD?
I can take it on, and maybe Michael, you can add to it. So I would say that, or Dina, that I think for anyone that you're working with, you should have at least some sort of goal setting opportunity with them to see what are they hoping to achieve, right? This is not something HUD is tracking, but this is something as you're doing case management, something you should be tracking so that you can then follow up with whomever you're working with to see how they're progressing towards those goals. So this is not information that HUD needs. However, we do think it's essential for you to have that information so you know how you want or what you want to work on with those folks. I also think it's helpful to use a coaching model because I hear the last part of your question, which is they're often coming to you for immediate need as opposed to wanting to talk through long-term goals that they're trying to achieve. So is there a way that you could weave into that session when they're coming to you for immediate needs as a way to coach them to seeing long-term or achieving long-term goals? And I think this is a really good probably plug for like a future webinar, but I think that is the harmony that you have to make. Dina and Michael, did you want to add anything?
Just real quick, Dina, for me, I think it's also important to kind of think about the Ross program as self-sufficiency, right? So it's not just helping an individual with immediate needs. I mean, that's part of it. But think about it in terms of how can you help individuals reduce the number of pressing needs that they have and ultimately help them with self-sufficiency. So self-sufficiency can be, housing stability, can be, financial stability. But it really goes beyond immediate needs and thinking long-term. To Trey's point, I think a lot of the Ross programming, right, we are asking you to give us, quantifiable information and not a lot of qualitative information, right? So think about this as an opportunity to start collecting some of that qualitative information, right? Asking residents, what are some of your long-term goals? And I think, oftentimes, having that conversation is a way to not only help the individual think about long-term goals, but it's also a way for you to the point of your question, think about, goals and use it as an opportunity as, when you do have those touch points with residents, to be able to Trey's point about coaching, remind them, hey, last time we talked, you mentioned that, you wanted to go back to school or open your own business. And sometimes that can go beyond immediate needs, but ultimately be tied to immediate needs because it can help individuals think about those, intermittent steps, towards self-sufficiency that, oftentimes can be lost if you as the Ross coordinator, is not initiating some of those conversations.
Dina, Ramonda has her hand raised.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. I put my question in the chat. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Then we can go to Frewin. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Rowan, there should be a
Okay.
there you go.
All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How are you today?
We're doing good.
Good. We've got a Ross, a Ross program. I need to clarify a couple of things. I've got a Ross and with public housing and a Ross in my family, multi-family. Is this specifically for public housing? What we're talking about now? Okay, cool. And then with that, we are using Family Matrix. Is there a value in us being on the seminar next week?
Not really. I think, Michael, once you send out the agenda, I think a chunk of that webinar, right, Michael, will be on how to use grant solutions.
Yes, in the OLDC system. I will just say if, you have any specific challenges about accessing or questions, related to grant solutions, it may be, opportunity for you to, attend and learn. But to Trey's point,
Good idea. Yes. That makes sense. Yeah, thanks. I will be there.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
But I know this is a question that came up for many folks that are using Family Metrics or Ask Online. Don't need to use Grant Solutions to submit your reports, because Ask Online and Family Metrics, once you submit through their software, they upload the data for you into Grant Solutions. So you don't need to know how to submit your report through Grant Solutions, because Ask Online and Family Metrics is doing that for you. However, I think it's still important, because folks may ask, HUD, did Ask Online or Family Metrics submit my data, and/or is my data correct? Right, then you would want to be able to go into Grant Solutions and see what your data looks like. And that can be an opportunity where you can learn how to do that through next week's session.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
One more question. The financial report, is that emailed in?
Yes, and it's emailed to your field office, your local field office. Great question.
Thank you.
Dina, we can go, we can go to Isa first, and then we'll go back to the chat.
Okay.
Hi.
Hello. Sorry,
Hey.
did I pronounce your name right?
No, it's Isa.
Isa, okay, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I just need a clarification. I'm reading the questions on the AQ, and somebody had asked something about is there an age limit of the participants? And the response was no. Usually when we report on anybody 18 and older, and then if we serve any child, then it goes under the parent. Is that accurate, or should we be putting the child as well if we're doing anything with the child? For example, like after school program or something like that.
Yeah, this is kind of a gray area with reporting, but great question. So I would say you can report on the child, right? That also would mean that many of the data metrics would not be applicable to that child. And so in those cases, you can put not applicable. But the reason why I say that is because there are some Ross programs that do after school programming, they do college prep, they do. And so in those cases, you are providing a service to a child, and it may not be with their family. And so we like to also track that as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that.
Yep. Dina, we probably have time for, I think we go until 3 o'clock?
All right, we scheduled for 3:30.
Oh, let's go. We're on a roll.
Okay, let's see. So here is a question. Let's see. Okay, in some of the questions where it talks about participation, does that apply for only the head of household, or does it include the children? Oh, sorry, this is sort of a repeat. Whose family members are part of Ross? Can we then include them as a service if the child has participated in the service?
Wait, can you repeat that question again, Dina? Sorry.
Yeah. And some of it says in some of the questions, I think in Grant Solutions, where it talks about participation, the questions that seem to apply only for the head of household, but does it also include the children whose family members are part of Ross? Can we then include them as a service if the child has participated in the service? Yeah.
Yeah, got you. So Ross is a little bit different than the Family Self-Sufficiency Program and/or the way that you report in on the 50058. So each individual for Ross, or each participant, is seen as its own individual. How we can link a family together is by how you identify, or your unique identifiers for the household identifier. So you So with that, when you're reporting for Ross, you don't need to necessarily report for the entire family. You're just reporting for that individual that you're serving. So in the instance where you may be serving in a two-parent household, you may be serving a father and a mother and maybe a teenager, right? That's 3 separate resident files that you'll then be reporting on, which means they'll have 3 separate person identifiers, but you will have the same household identifier, which would then link them so we know that they're part of the same household. I hope that gets to your question.
Okay, here's a simple question, but I think it's an important one. If we don't use Grant Solutions, are we still able to see the aggregated data?
I guess the question would be what system you would be using.
Right. So whatever system this person uses has to feed into Grant Solutions.
That is correct. So
if
there's,
you're using, let's say, oh, sorry, go ahead, Trey.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Dina, because you're going to go somewhere.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, yes, if you were using a different case management software, that one would have, in order for us to know that you have reported, we have to see the data in Grant Solutions. And so if you're not using one of the case management systems that has a direct relationship right now, like Family Metrics, you can work with your provider to have them, make sure your system does speak to Grant Solutions. But and in that case, 1, we will know that you've reported, and 2, you will see your data on the data dashboard.
Yep. For those that are using, and for those that are using Tracking at a Glance, I know they've been in communications with us for the last several months on integrating and making reporting, updating their software, one for the new data elements and also all the reporting requirements, but also hoping to integrate their system with Grant Solutions. So that is something they're looking to do and in talks with Grant Solutions about. I don't have a sense of the timing of that. However, I'm certain that Tracking at a Glance will be able to let you all know when that happens. And then lastly, I was going to say, there are some grantees that would just submit a narrative statement, right? And or some other type of reporting in Excel that is not through Grant Solutions. They'll send, a media report. That is additional. You can send that information or those, that type of qualitative reports. However, it is not in replacement of the reporting and Grant Solutions. So you must still respond to the data metrics and in Grant Solutions.
Okay. I have 2 more questions that are really good ones. One is, what information are you entering for a non-participant into the case management software or Grant Solutions?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yep. It just disappeared. Sorry. Basically, what information are you capturing? What data are you capturing for a non-participant?
Yep. So it can be anything or all of the data elements. The reason why we put when you select participant in Grant Solutions, all of the one, you're saying that someone has received an assessment, which means you met with them, they did an initial assessment for you to learn what their needs are, and then you're now creating a plan for you to meet those needs through service coordination. In the event that is a non-participant, you have not done that assessment, but they may have come to you for service, right? So in that instance, you may not have as much information on this particular individual like you would a participant where you've done an assessment. So in Grant Solutions, when you go into report, no matter what, all of the data elements or data metrics in Grant Solutions, all of the questions will require a response for a participant, but it won't require a response for a non-participant. And that is because we are assuming because they have not done an assessment, you may not be privy to having as much information on this person. And just to give a better example, let's say I do a job fair for everyone at my in my community. I may have some information on some of the folks that attended because I've done that one-on-one case management. I've done an assessment with them. However, I might not have done it with all of them. And for those that I haven't, that still received a service of attending that job fair, then they may be considered a non-participant. And lastly, I will just say this, that I used to be in you all's shoes. I had a very, I won't call him an annoying, but just in case you guys know her, but a very ambitious executive director that wanted me to report on any and everything that I was doing. And one of the challenges was reporting on these larger community events that I had to put on that required individual tracking and reporting. And one of the ways that I've got around that was I used to create very simple assessments for when someone or when folks attended my events. They had to do like this maybe 5 to 10 questionnaire that were just initial questions, and so that I could follow up with them to get more information. So then I met the need of them receiving some sort of initial assessment and as well getting enough information so I can just enter their information and then be able to follow up with them later. So that's just a strategy as you all are thinking about how to get more folks to become participants that are attending your community events.
And Trey, if I may, I mean, I think that's just a wonderful example because I would imagine that, in some cases, you may have a non-participant who you're constantly, giving services or assistance to. And that may, to Trey's point, be an opportunity for you to bring that person into the program, if they're qualified, and bring them in to become a participant by doing that assessment and giving you an opportunity to really begin to not only count that individual, to your, for your numbers, but also give, in some cases, more intentional services and support to that particular resident, particularly again if it's someone who may be coming in and regularly asking for your assistance, and you have a connection and a contact with that individual.
Yep. By no means are we trying to take away from you all doing community events. We are trying to strike the balance between that, right? Of you guys doing that one-on-one time and your community events. But certainly if you are doing more community events and need to figure out strategy, email us because we can, I know Michael and I and Dina are happy to hop on calls those are fun calls to us, right? We like to have those type of discussions with you all to think about how to better your tracking of folks so that you can better report. And then, Adina, should we go to Nakia, who's has her hand raised?
Sure. Yeah,
That's their hand raised.
absolutely.
Oh, good morning, or good afternoon. So I think my question, I guess, was exactly like Kirsten's. I believe you guys answered already about what I've been doing is if parents came in and they were utilizing youth services, I was tracking their children under their data. So that is incorrect. If what I'm hearing is we have to enter the kid or the kids in the household as participants, right?
Yeah, so one of the things that we like to show Congress is, and our leadership, but certainly Congress, is the um, the range of folks that you all work with. So that's youth, that's, work-able adults, that's also elders and people with disabilities. And through the demographic information, we're able to say and count how many youth you all worked with. Unfortunately, if you put those services under the adult, we won't be able to know that you're actually working with youth. And so that's why we're asking, in those cases to put that, put the youth separate so we're able to track that information.
Okay.
I will say this will bring about questions because, of course, you will have the data elements may not apply, right? And I was saying that it could
Yeah.
be unapplicable, but also the question about what would an assessment for a child be for them to be considered a participant.
Yeah, because I saw the other thing is if you don't have an assessment, then they're not considered a participant, they're a non-participant.
Yeah, and Michael, can you write down that question so we can respond, and we'll find a response to the listserv. I forgot what we said some years ago around this. I don't know if Dina, you recall, but I'll try to think through that and see if we can pull up what we said and then send that out to the listserv.
Yeah,
So
because
you all
I
can
know
have
when I was trained by my predecessor, I was trained as we could track anybody 16 and over, but all 18 and over have to have a plan on file with us.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is interesting.
Yeah, and Nakia too, I think you and I have talked about this too, and thanks for some of that nuanced perspective, Trey, because it is something that I think I've struggled with in terms of trying to have a consistent response. But we'll, to Trey's point, find some guidance that exists, as well as creating some additional guidance to help you understand how to work with and track youth participants.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I'll go to Heather, which I know Heather. Hi, Heather.
Hi, Trey. It's me. So I just wanted to ask about kids. So I know in the data element that just came out, it says the 3 to 5 year childhood education service. That one says to report under head of household. So would that be the only one that we would do that way, and then the rest of things we would do under the child? Just thinking, like, because we have a couple after school tutoring situations, and we, like, do we count the kids since they're older than 5?
Yeah, so I think the intent of that data metric was to ask if the parent is receiving like a childcare service, so as opposed to the child receiving childcare services. I guess it was, the intent was, like, for example, they're receiving a childcare service so the parent can go to work or, go to school or what have you. That being a service to the parent. But like I said, I think we need to revisit this and we can send out something to everyone around this.
Thank you.
Yep. Heather, that wasn't the question I thought you were going to have, but.
Oh, we'll wait till the next one for that.
Okay, good. All right. And Dina, we can go back to you.
Okay, sure. So this one's been up for a while. So this person is asking about, Lindsay Arroyo is asking about a resident. It says in the description of a data element, data element 39, that, okay, I'll just read it. For example, Fix ID 39, it says in description receives training, but we have offered the service or resource to our clients, but then the family did not follow through. Are we still able to count it as a service?
That is a great question. So it should only count if they receive the service.
Great.
But I
Okay.
hear the frustration, which is it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not referring the service. It just means that they didn't receive the service. So that's just something to consider when we're looking at data and reporting. So I hear that frustration. So that's something for us to think about.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here's two questions that are sort of related. One is, and I think these are good, we might have to make a policy call on this one. Is the financial report due by December as well? And then the next question is, if I submit through Ask online and the SF-24 is submitted to the local field office, should we coordinate our submission?
Great question. So I would say, what do you think, Dana and Michael? Yes, we're making a policy call on the spot, but I will say I'm okay with this, and we will confirm through email. So let the email be the official word, but we're okay. I'm okay extending the financial reports also until December 31st.
Yeah, and we can communicate with, Janelle in the field about that. But I agree. I think it probably is easier for, instead of having, multiple dates that, you're trying to play with in your mind, that if we have the 31st to correspond with everything related to reporting.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you for that. And then here is another question I think that will be useful. It's from Bernadette O'Connor. Is the Excel reporting spreadsheet available today for the one that we can use, or is it still being changed? Please let us know when it will be available and how we will be notified.
I think it is still being changed. When I looked last week, we can follow up with everyone on that. Michael, you can write that also down. And luckily, the folks that are in charge of it will be on the call on October 18th. So if you don't hear an answer from us between now and the 18th, feel free to ask that question again, because it is the Grant Solutions folks who would need to be updating that Excel sheet.
Yeah, and I know we've communicated with them to, updated it, which they knew, but we've communicated again with them. So, yeah.
Okay. Another question is, okay, this is we answered this in the email, but it's worth repeating. Can you clarify when the new standards for success questions need to be reported on, this reporting period or next?
Michael?
Yeah, so and like the presentation, it touches on how to report for this period, with the thought being that by the time you start your reporting process in the future, you would use the data guide. But we understood for the new data elements, individuals didn't necessarily have access to those while you were doing your reporting. So the data guide came out in the middle of the reporting process. Ideally, moving forward, you would incorporate the new data elements in future reporting and, be proactive in terms of reporting on that information. But for this reporting period, because you didn't have access to it, that's where we, kind of talked about how to report. And again, there is, if the new data elements are required for you to report on based on your area of need, you should select, NA response. And that won't impact your data score. If the new data elements are required for your area of need, but you did not track them with the residents, you can select no. If they're available, new data elements are required, and you did track them, then you can select the appropriate response. And all of that is for this reporting period. That's due on on December 31st. for moving forward, as much as you can, you should incorporate the new data guide into your reporting and your assessments and data collection with residents.
And if I can add to this too, because I saw this question earlier, I think I answered it, which is, what is the period that you all are reporting on? So although we extended until December 31st, the reporting period is remaining the same. So we're just giving more time for you to report on the fiscal year 23 reporting period. So for many of our grantees, I think, which grants ended in 23? Was that 2019 grantees?
Yes.
Okay, so 2020, 2021, and 2020 and 2021 grantees, your reporting period, or the period of which you're reporting, is October 1st, 2022 through September 30th, 2023, right? And that report will be due December 31st. For 22 grantees, your grant term just started June 1st. So you're reporting from June 1st, 2023 to September 30th, 2023. And then 2019 grantees, you all should be submitting your final report. And yes, we're extending your final report also to December 31st. And you'll be reporting from October 1st, 2023 to many of you all ended your grants May 31st, 2023. Some of you extended, so you'll go through that extension date if you fall in that category. You don't have to memorize what I'm saying. Michael, we can draft an email with those dates so folks have that in email form too.
Okay.
Okay, there's a lot of good questions here. So here's one from, let's see, Chantel. If I did an intake on an elder individual, but they do not need any supports now, do I close them or keep them open? The individual told me they will need supports in the future, but just wanted to get the intake out of the way.
Yep. So one thing that we are doing, so you can continue to have them as a participant because you did the assessment. No need to close them because then reopening them may, be an issue. One way we're trying to combat that, or at least from how we're analyzing the data, is to see within each reporting period the number of people that's been served. So you may have an individual that was served last year, but this year they didn't receive any services. So you'll put no for receiving services, and then in the future they may receive a service, and then you will then put that they received a service. This will be in the case of, especially with those using grant solutions, if you're cloning. And for those that raise your eyebrows to say, I don't know what the cloning feature is, we'll be sure to go over that on the 18th. And essentially what that is for those that are using grant solutions, you can clone your last year's report to be for this year, which means that you won't have to enter in the same folks that you worked with last year. They'll clone over, and you'll just be entering now on their, for this year's report, the current report, what services they received for this year. So the demographic information will clone over to the new year, but you'll just have to then update the report for the new year to then say what services they receive. In that case, in relation to the question, that individual won't receive any services, but their information will still clone over.
Okay. All right, let's see. There was another question that I lost. I'm sorry, because, let's see. There was a great question. Okay, this is sort of related. What if a resident stops being a participant during one grant, then comes back during a different grant? How do we identify them?
Yep. So I think that's where the cloning feature will come about. But certainly you will want that individual to still have the same the same person identifier. And that's how we're able to still track them over time. So that is just something we'll show you how to do that clone feature on October 18th. Grant Solutions folks will walk through that. And that's just to make sure that the person identifier is remaining consistent throughout.
Okay, then this one I'll answer really quickly. For renew grants oh wait, no, never mind, sorry, this one, it keeps moving, I really apologize. Okay, so here's a question. How do I know if my agency has been approved for direct services? Would that information be general or specific? For example, generally provide transportation, or specifically like provide a 10-ride bus card with a value of $5,000. I cannot find this information on the grant award. So this is Teresa Carter. Teresa, if you are interested in exploring the use of your grant for providing direct services, you have to be either an FY21 or FY22 grantee, and there is a form that you submit to us to the Ross mailbox, and the Ross mailbox is ross-pih.hud.gov. We'll send you the form, and you have to answer certain questions that will help us evaluate whether or not your request is something that we would approve. So yeah, just send us an email, and we will answer your question. We will answer your request. Okay. Let's see here.
Let's do one more question, then we can close out.
Okay, sure. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I would like to submit a narrative report. What items, topics should be addressed or included in the narrative? Is there a limit on pages or a specific format?
You want to answer that, Dina?
Yeah, I can answer it. So you can, if you want, submit a narrative, but it's not required. And what is obviously really required is the data. You can't submit a narrative in lieu of the data. You have to submit the data. And then if you want to round it out with a narrative, you can. But I'm going to be completely honest with you all, and we are a lean team, so we may not get to it. So I don't want you to spend a lot of time working on a narrative that we may not read or we may not get to unless you really flag it for us outside the system. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, thanks for that, Dina. I'll add too, right? And that's also something, because when I hear narrative too, I think about not just, possible challenges, which could include, be included in your narrative, but I also hear, possible successes that you want to bring to our attention. So, that's also along with, to Dina's point, submitting it with your data, a narrative. You can also send us your success stories and or challenges, right, into the Ross mailbox. You can just use a subject of Ross success, because we do want to know about the work that you're doing. Or you can also send us your challenges, because to the earlier point that Dina and Trey were making is that we want to be more intentional about technical assistance. So as much as we hear and understand, the better. To Dina's point, though, we are lean. So if you do want us to know and hear about it, make sure you email us in a way that really highlights in the subject exactly what it is, for us to put some additional eyes on it.
Yep.
So I know we want to close out. Oh, sorry, Michael.
No, go ahead, Gina.
Oh, sorry. I know we wanted to close out, but here's one question I think the answer is short that I think would be useful to answer. If you have a caseload in the hundreds, can we just select 50? And those 50, they need to be based in our area of need, correct? So yes. I would say we yes, but we want them to report on everyone, right? Not just 50. Yep. If you have hundreds, we want to know about them.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because
All right.
sometimes you don't want to shortchange, right? You never know what will come up in the future. Like, for example, will HUD give additional funding for those that are serving additional people, right? We haven't done anything like that, maybe, but we also can't speak to what we will do in the future. But that is just something to consider. One, I was going to just say two things. That is, we will certainly, if we can, I think we'll still have access to these questions. And I'll get with Michael and Dina so that we could respond and then maybe send out the responses to the questions that we didn't answer to the Ross listserv, so you all can have that. And if we don't address it, like I said, we still have until the 18th. We have another webinar on the 18th where we'll answer some questions there. Or certainly we want to respond to the questions that you guys have here before then. And then lastly, I was going to say I attended the NARO conference that happened last week, and I'm not sure if any of you all were there. But I also wanted to highlight, I don't think I did during that conference, but highlight that, you know, we are not yet, there is 2023, fiscal year 2023 money out there, and no, we haven't published the NOFO, but you can also imagine that any day now, a NOFO could be published, or any month now, or it's getting closer and closer because we are now in fiscal year 24. So with that, just to prepare, if you are looking to apply for 23 funds, to prepare yourselves for that. Michael?
So I want to thank everyone for attending today. This interaction is something that we want to do more of, and it's really important for us to hear from you. And I think all the questions were right on point. Really going to encourage those individuals who need to hear the information to come out on the 18th, and we'll be sending out another notice for just to bring it to your attention in terms of being able to attend and have the information for attendance. I think someone asked earlier, do you need to register? You don't, but there'll be a link for you to add to your mailbox, to your calendar, as well as general information on how to log into the session. So I look forward to hearing from you all in the mailbox, hearing from you on the 18th, and thank you so much, and I hope you found this session to be useful, and continue to email us if you do have any additional questions. So with that, thank you all and have a wonderful rest of the day.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using IntelliEvents. You may now disconnect.